I've never liked cancer. Never have, never will. It has its place in how it affects all of us, commonly for the worse. No one really goes, cancer. I remember when I got cancer. Why, it was one of the greatest moments of my life. I wish I had cancer again. If you see anyone who has cancer, anyone's family who has someone who has cancer, it's not pretty. I remember my neighbor got cancer. His name was George. George was a husband, a father, kind of a reserved, stoic figure for the neighborhood. But really, in my adolescence as a whole, I grew up around him, mostly playing in the yard, and I would see him mow the lawn every once in a while, get mail. I didn't see him as much the last few years compared to when I was a kid, but one day my family found out he had cancer. We visited their family twice during the time he was alive, though in retrospect I wish it was 3. I remember the last time I saw him. And I knew it would have been the last time too. It was not the same George I saw as a kid. He was at his home, in his bed, and the lack of hair was the least of my concern. He looked like he aged 15 years and months. Just seemed frail. It was scary to see. You fight for so long and then one day you're just weak. There's not much more I could say about that experience. He whispered some things to my mother, but otherwise that was about all the strength he could muster. We mostly talked to his wife while his kids sat around looking bored. All they knew was that everything was sad right now. When I say I wish I had seen him one more time, I mostly mean between the first and second interactions. There was something missing in between. I feel like I never got to understand. Because the first time I saw him was the week he got his diagnosis. The family knew the cancer was strong, but it was at a point where there was some hope that maybe George could beat this. Even if it would have been a long fight, there was still a lot of strength in him. Seeing him between those 2 times was like a tree losing its leaves in the winter. It's still hard to believe nature can make something, let alone a man, wither so fast. But our family went and met with George's family. George was on the couch, the youngest on his knee, and he would bounce it to keep her happy. His knee would get tired every once in a while, so he stopped, and the kid would start tugging at his shirt, and he would start bouncing his knee again. Not to mention his wife, probably one of the bravest people I've ever seen. You could tell every night she was probably in shambles, but she never wanted to cry in front of someone that wasn't her husband. George's other kids saw that we brought some food over. We made some cookies. He asked his mom if he could have one before dinner, and she said no, but we insisted, let him have one. He's going through enough already. While we were talking, George had to go to the bathroom, so he put his kid down back on the couch. It honestly reminded me that I needed to go to the bathroom too, so I went down the hall to the bathroom George was using and waited for him outside the door. As I was standing there, I heard a whimper. I figured he needed some privacy to let off the weight of his condition. I almost walked back to the living room until I heard something else. That wasn't a sound of fear. It was moaning. He was masturbating. I don't know how long I stood there, but my mind was racing about why he was doing this. I didn't even hear him finish. I heard the door open and I felt this immediate shock in me. When he left the bathroom, I immediately tried looking down at the floor like I didn't know anything happened. But George knew I heard everything. He stared at me for a good 10 seconds before he said something I knew he said to nobody else. I'm going to die. I still had a hard time trying to stare at him, but when I did, I blurted out a question. Why does that make you want to masturbate? Well, I didn't mean it like that. He looked up at the ceiling for a few seconds, glanced down at the hallway where our families were, and he looked over me at the wall behind me with this mix of fear, acceptance, bitter at his circumstance. Knowing I'll die. That's not what makes me do it. I still pleasure myself like any other man, but cancer. I learned something. It's spiteful. It knows a brave person will succumb to the same disease as a man in cowardice. The only way to beat cancer is to never get tired, no matter what. Does that sound possible to you? I wanted to say yes, but every circumstance kept leading back to death. I knew the answer was no, but I still said I wasn't sure. You have shame when you masturbate. After the ejaculation, you feel bad about that, don't you? Well, cancer doesn't change that. Listen. I've known you since you were born. I have seen your life blossom while you have seen mine wither. That whole time, I have wanted to have sex with your mother. The day I moved into this neighborhood, I heard a knock on my door, and I saw this lady with a red velvet cake. It was the best cake I ever had. Every night that I have had sex since, I close my eyes and I imagine your bearer of life. In the bathroom, I was thinking of other women, but she also drifted into my mind and, There's a way to never become tired, kid. I know it sounds impossible, but There's a way. You'll still die, but you'll beat the cancer before it kills you. The key is to never keep secrets to yourself, no matter what. No matter how much it might embarrass you. It's not worth living a lie, because you'll never tell anyone what you masturbate to. It's not a shame. And when you finish, you only have yourself to feel that embarrassment. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I have so much more I could tell you, but He paused. He just spaced out for a second. He straightened his posture and walked back into the living room. At that moment, it was like I saw a man's fate sealed, as if he died right there talking to me. Never had I needed to piss so much in my life. Eventually, George died. My family went to the funeral. I met his now widower. I never really talked to her ever, but I had the chance to converse with her when she had some time alone. I went up, I said hi. We didn't have much in common, but I tried to talk about uplifting things. The weather, the music they played when he was laid to rest. I told her I talked to George once, and I was able to see how deep a thinker he was. She let out a little bit of a giggle and said that George was the most honest man she will ever meet. And I said, I know, right? When I met him at the bathroom in your house, he told me about how he wanted to have sex with my mom.